We consistently beat MyGM mode on the hardest settings and in the hardest challenges imaginable, so in this video we're breaking down the 10 things that you need to know if you want to win in MyGM mode every single time. The first thing you'll need to get right when starting a new MyGM save is your draft. In 2K23, you actually have the option of setting the draft budget to 3 different limits, but this tip is relevant for any amount of budget you have, so that's not really important here. Firstly, you'll want to forget everything you know about wrestling. That's right, you thought R-Truth was a comedy act. Wrong, he actually costs more than Damian Priest to sign. What I'm trying to say is that you have to look at the numbers in MyGM mode and forget about your prior knowledge of each wrestler, as that isn't going to help you here. Prioritize superstars' stamina, popularity, and star power, as these will all help you put on high quality matches for a longer period of time. Then you need to be drafting a variety of class types that provide good synergy. So the way that this works is that bruisers will match up well against fighters, cruisers will do well against giants, and then specialists are capable of having a decent feud with anyone, but they won't get as much of a boost. You also have the heel and face dynamic that needs to be taken into account. Heels should always be up against faces, otherwise the synergy is thrown off and the match rating will suffer. So when you begin a draft, filter it by stamina and look for the best all-round picks early on. A great example of this is our first pick here, which is Randy Orton, who has brilliant stamina, pretty high popularity, and 3 star power, which are the 3 things that you should look for first. Then you take note of whether they're face or heel and what class type they are, so you can choose an opponent for them. You then want to continue this process with every other rivalry, both male and female, making sure that you have a good variety of matchups. But also keep in mind that you'll need to have extra rivalries planned for the future when the first ones are completed. Budgeting correctly is really important in MyGM, as your whole run could be derailed if you run out of cash. In terms of the draft, aim to save around $100,000 of your budget so that you can put on decent match types and buy power cards, as these will be necessary during your playthrough. To do this, make sure you're keeping tabs on how much you spend per wrestler. Not that you need to sit there writing down the cost of every single one down to calculate the median spend, but don't go out and buy all of the big names, as you'll run out of money pretty quickly. Having this extra cash also allows you to plug any gaps you might have missed in your draft by buying free agents. There are legends that you can sign as well, but for what they're worth, we would recommend avoiding these if you can. Now, with the draft out the way and a little bit of money in the bank, excuse the pun, it's time for your first show. In 2K22's MyGM mode, we recommended putting on 4 title matches here so you could crown both the male and female tag champions whilst also putting on a great show. But in 2K23 it's slightly different, and that's due to the inclusion of the mid-card title for the men's division. Now what you want to do is put on 2 tag team title matches and then also put on a singles match for the mid-card title, as this will allow you to boost the popularity of as many stars as possible by a considerable amount. Whichever title match you choose to ignore in the first week, you can always use a call-out promo to get their rivalry underway as well, so you won't lose out on that. This means that after 1 week, you'll have 5 extra superstars with boosted popularity, allowing you to put on better matches in the upcoming weeks without needing them to be title matches. Once the first week is done and dusted, you've got all of your champions in place and some rivalries have been started, the rest of the playthrough will just be a balancing act of maintaining stamina, increasing popularity, and ensuring that rivalries continue to develop. This is quite tricky to do though, seeing as stamina decreases fairly quickly, so it's important to know how that works. Firstly, if a wrestler doesn't appear on a show at all, they gain 12 stamina back, but if they're in a promo, they'll only gain 6. That being said, if they don't make an appearance whatsoever, they'll also lose a few points of popularity, so don't completely rest them for multiple weeks in a row. Each match type will also affect stamina differently as well. You have low impact matches like normal and tables, then medium, high, and very high. The higher the impact on stamina, the better the match quality and crowd reaction will be, so you need to find a good balance here. Keeping your roster as small as you can will help with this a lot, as you won't have superstars missing out every week and losing popularity. Having a few extra feuds to put in as filler when you need stamina is fine, but don't oversaturate the locker room. When you have less people to worry about, it also makes rivalries a lot easier to track and progress, as your card will practically book itself every week. Rotate the rivalries for every show based on how much stamina they have, and use callouts to progress the ones that aren't fighting. Within these callout promos, take into account which star has more stamina as well, as the person giving the promo will gain 6 back while the person being called out will gain 12. If the one with less stamina has a much better promo rating and will be more likely to advance the rivalry, then you might still want them to do it, but that's something for you to decide when it comes to it. One of the main things the game looks for when rewarding your booking is show variety, so it's really important that you spice up each show with an array of different match types and stipulations. For example, a great card will ideally include a tag match, a singles match, and then maybe a triple threat or a fatal 4-way as well, with the other match or matches being whatever you want them to be. Then, within those matches, try and throw some stipulations in here and there during the weekly shows. The odd tables match, maybe an Extreme Rules match, that kind of thing, just to keep it interesting. Of course, you do need to be wary of stamina though, as these stipulations will take a toll on your roster if you keep putting them on. At premium live events, try to add a stipulation to nearly every single match, as these are the shows where you're going to gain the most fans you possibly can. It's imperative that you have a good card with plenty of rivalries, matching class type synergies, and stipulations, that way you'll blow your opponents out of the water. This next tip is a quick but very crucial one. Once you progress a rivalry all the way up to level 4, make sure you end it at a premium live event if possible, even if that means waiting a few weeks before putting them against each other again. Fighting 2 people in a level 4 rivalry will not resolve it on a weekly show, and will actually negatively affect the match rating as the crowd will get bored. However, if they fight at a PLE, they'll receive a huge match boost for it, so do everything you can to end the feuds here. However, if you start a rivalry you didn't want to, or for whatever reason you need to end a level 4 rivalry early, you can always use a submission match type to do this. When 2 wrestlers take part in this, it will instantly resolve any rivalry between them, so if you want your champion to build a rivalry with someone else as their opponent is really low on stamina, throw them in one of these. Power cards are essential if you want to cruise to victory in a MyGM run. Some of them have the potential to change the standings completely, and others can disrupt your opponents so they have a much harder time catching up with you. 3 randomly generated power cards will appear in the store every week, so there's a huge element of luck when it comes to getting the ones that will do the most damage, but you should always be checking this. The only thing I will say is that the pricing of them is quite strange, as there are some that cost $75,000 that aren't even that good, so you need to know which ones are a rip-off. Any cards that boost a superstar's morale aren't worth it, as you're paying a huge sum of money to essentially save yourself a bit of money in the future, but you can do this without a power card pretty easily. Just having a low morale superstar feature on shows will keep them happy. Then just meet any requests they might have and you should be fine. Double cost cards are also not really worth it unless you're rich and they're very broke, as you're spending a large sum of money to potentially make them spend a large sum of money. It doesn't really make sense. Good power cards to look out for are the special promotion ones that boost your fans gained by a significant amount on the next show, and the match specific ones where they give a large boost to a certain match stipulation on that show. Stuff like veto stars and injury cards can be good, but they're much more situational, so if they're necessary, go for it, but don't rush out to get them if you're comfortable. A feature introduced in 2K23 was Hall of Fame trophies that actually have an impact on the rankings between brands. Your aim isn't solely to obtain the most fans anymore, you also need to be collecting these as well. If you go over to the Season tab, you'll be able to see all of the season objectives you need to complete to get Hall of Fame trophies, and these are usually fairly straightforward to do. They ask you to do things like put on 10 tag team matches, have a self-promo on 8 shows, and reach a certain amount of money during the season, which can all be done fairly quickly as long as you're making a conscious effort to do so. There are 8 challenges to complete every season, and you get a Hall of Fame trophy for completing 5 of them, then another one for completing them all, so make sure to get these done and do not forget about them. Whilst you progress through your playthrough, you'll gradually unlock upgrades for your logistics, which you should buy as soon as you have the opportunity. This is another reason to save some money from the draft and always try to have some spare, as when these pop up, they'll make a big difference to your shows. The main one is your arena, which you can actually buy 4 upgrades for in the first season, with each upgrade earning you more money from ticket sales and increasing your show quality overall. It is vital that you upgrade your arena so you make as much money as possible from each show. Upgrading your crew, special effects, and advertisement will also boost your show quality as well, with your advertisement gaining you more fans every time you upgrade it. In order to get to the top of the rankings and stay there, these logistics must be maxed out every single week, so be sure to budget properly and don't overspend on weekly shows. Finally, you need to know how to build the perfect draft, as this is the foundation of a successful run. We briefly went over this in this video, but there are a lot more details that you need to know, so watch the video on screen now for all of the ins and outs.